So good morning and welcome everyone to Project Spectrum's Cyber Circuits webinar. Now, our very special guest today is Morgan Adamski. She is chief of NSA's new and innovative Cybersecurity Collaboration Center. She is responsible for leading efforts to augment and amplify the way that NSA prevents and eradicates cyber threats to national security systems and the defense industrial base through collaborative and analytical public-private partnerships. Now, Morgan has been at the forefront of NSA's computer network defense, computer network exploitation, and cyber analysis missions for more than a decade. Prior to that, she acted as the senior cyber policy advisor, technical and operational subject matter expert to the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense for Cyber Policy. She was the primary contributor to the 2018 DoD cyber strategy and responsible for orchestrating the department's new approach to cyber deterrence. Now, Morgan has asked me not to read her entire bio, and I promised her I would not do that, but I would be remiss if I did not mention her educational background. She holds a Master's of Science in Strategic Intelligence from Mercyhurst University, and I do find myself having to mention that she completed a Bachelor's of Art in Peace, War, and Defense with a specialization in national security from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, my alma mater, where she served as team captain for the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill women's lacrosse team. And so I will say with that, go Heels, and please welcome Morgan Adamski.
Thanks, Rick. I really appreciate you going through my bio and also bringing up my education, and obviously go Heels. So always will bleed Carolina blue. So I do appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center and what we're doing here at NSA, if that works for you, Rick, and then we'll kind of pivot into questions.
That works perfectly. So I'm gonna give you the floor for right now.
Thank you so much. So good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm excited to be here. I want to talk a little bit about the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center for those of you that are not familiar with this new facility and organization at the National Security Agency. So when the Cybersecurity Directorate was stood up, it was actually stood up in October 2019. And one of the reasons that it was stood up in NSA at the time is that we really felt that we needed to bring together the two critical elements, the signals intelligence mission and the cybersecurity mission at NSA, and we need to bring them under a common umbrella because we knew the adversaries who were really doing malicious cyber activity against critical networks, and then we had our net defenders who really understood the networks. And we wanted to make sure that they were talking to each other, that they were sharing information in a way that they could actually action it, put defenses in place, and deliver those outcomes of securing critical technology, securing national security systems, and securing the defense industrial base. The defense industrial base, as you all know, is critical to maintaining our military advantage in the Department of Defense and for the US. We know that the DIB is actively targeted every single day by nation state actors. And when you're a nation state actor and you know a contractor or a company has specific intelligence that's going to help you get that military advantage, you're not going to stop. You're going to keep coming. And we knew that we had to step up from a national security agency perspective and start to directly engage with those companies that were being targeted and help to better protect them against those nation state actors, because that is where our insights are, both on the foreign intelligence side, but also in our cybersecurity backgrounds. And so we wanted to bring that to bear. So to be able to do that, we had to create a construct, an organization that was really focused on that level of engagement. And so the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center was established. I'm actually talking to you right now from the physical facility of the CCC. It is a 75% unclassified space. 25% of it is classified. It is enabled to actually have our industry partners come into the facility, share data with us in real time, and be able to just better understand and build a comprehensive threat picture. And so the facility is brand new. We have over 250 relationships that we manage on any given day with the defense industrial base. And we do that both virtually as well as in person. We also have been championing and working with the Department of Defense to provide free cybersecurity services to the defense industrial base. So we have a lot of new programs that we're doing. Very excited to be here today to talk a little bit about those programs, but also just answer any questions that people have and talk about our relationship with the Department of Defense DIB programs across the board to include Project Spectrum.
Want to talk a little bit about public-private partnerships to start. And what I want to do is I want to ask you, what steps is NSA taking to really share that threat information more broadly, obviously at the unclassified level?
Yeah, so those of you that are familiar with the National Security Agency, you know, there's the historic joke, no such agency, right? We tended to exist behind a fence line in our classified environment. And what we've realized, though, is that we really only have one part of the picture when it comes to understanding the cyber threat, right? We have our apertures and our capabilities to understand what the adversary is doing from foreign space, but we really don't have a good idea of how that's impacting the defense industrial base and critical infrastructure owners. And we really need to be able to facilitate that conversation. And so by opening this facility and being able to share information at the lowest classification possible, to give you an idea, in the last year, that was 10,000 different unique analytical exchanges with our DIB partners. We're really enabling us to be able to share that information at the lowest classification. It is unique, it is timely, and it is actionable. But the best part is it's not just information that we're sharing. We're also gleaning insights from those defense industrial base partners, what they're seeing on their network, and it's really helping us gain a better understanding of what the adversary is doing and get ahead of it. And so one thing that we've learned a lot in the last 2 years since we've established the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center is it's often sensitive. It's not as sensitive what we know as to how we know it. So we can share what we know. We just have to kind of still protect that sources and methods. And so being able to say, this is the type of information that we can share at the lowest classification, and this is the type of details we need to protect, that's really helping us to share a lot of information much faster with the defense industrial base.
And when it comes to determining that, like you said, you want to share the information as broadly as possible, but it's really trying to keep who shared the information with you in the first place or how you gain that information. That's what you're really trying to make sure doesn't necessarily get out there. Who helps make that determination? I mean, is it because obviously you're trying to get the information out quickly? So is it, is there a series of benchmarks, or is it a quick 15-minute phone call, or, how is it that you determine what information is going to be shared and what isn't?
Yeah, so there's no simple solution. There's no simple equation for this. I'm going to be completely honest with you. It has taken 2 years for us to evolve to figure out, okay, what are the types of information that we can share fairly easy, and then what requires more of a conversation to better understand how do we protect our equities, but again, share. What I will say is that when you talk about technical indicators, IP addresses, IOCs, hashes, and that type of information, we fully recognize that a significant amount of that information is already known by our private sector partners, right? They're seeing it. It's on the internet. And so what we are really trying to do is provide context. Here's the information you need to be concerned about because we know that it's coming from a nation state actor. We call that giving signal through the noise. Tons of noise on everyone's network, but if we can really play a part in saying, hey, this is specifically what you need to focus on, here's the activity that's coming from a very bad place, that's when we really start to have that type of conversation of, okay, we can share this more easily, more readily, and then it becomes a regular process for us. The other piece that I would add is, while we're making a lot of decisions about our information, it's really awesome that we are able to learn from the defense industrial space what they already know about. They're helping us realize that what we think is super classified, they've already known about for 6 months, right? Because they're like, hey, we're seeing this on our network. We think it's this activity. We think it's this actor. We're like, oh, hey, they're seeing it out in the wild. It's no longer classified. So it's really the conversations that are helping us make those equity decisions on any given day.
No, and that's fantastic. It really does, again, go back to the theme of public-private partnerships, because hearing from the folks, like you said, with boots on the ground, as we say, is I imagine just as much of a valuable piece as the intel that you get from other sources. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, sorry, I sort of left you hanging there. I, so one other thing that I want to talk about, particularly when it comes to cybersecurity and small to medium businesses, which obviously a lot of those make up the DIB. You hear about cybersecurity sometimes being too costly, and whether it's cost in dollars or whether it's cost in time and other resources, there's an old saying that security and convenience don't really go hand in hand. What what do you think about that? And are there any simple or less costly steps that you believe companies can take to help bolster their cybersecurity?
So, first and foremost, I think that just creating a cybersecurity awareness type environment for all of your employees is really critical. I think that's something great that the Project Spectrum team does, right? They provide a lot of that training and awareness. And here's the things you need to take in consideration as you're building a network, you're monitoring it, as you're protecting it. So, first and foremost, awareness is key. You can't take cybersecurity and put it in a silo. It literally underpins your entire mission functionality, right? If you can't do any of your work on the network that you're trying to do it on, that is a business issue. So you can't just separate it out and say, let's not worry about those cybersecurity things. Because if you've got a problem, most likely you're going to have to come back to cybersecurity to figure it out, especially when it comes to network connectivity and how you function. What I would offer, though, is that there is some really good programs across the Department of Defense to provide low-cost, scalable commercial solutions, cybersecurity services that are essentially protecting against the most commonly used attack vectors from nation-state actors. So, Project Spectrum has some. I'll talk a little bit about ours as well. So we offer, through the Department of Defense, protective DNS to small to medium-sized DIB companies. So anyone that has a DoD contract and is able, receives non-public information. That's our bar and criteria. They can easily register. We actually provision out the service through Akamai, so companies can get signed up, and they're immediately put in and blocked for all of the adversaries that we're seeing take advantage of that attack vector. And so I think that from a protective DNS perspective, there's a bunch of these services across the department and a bunch of different components that are providing them. If I was a defense industrial base partner, I would immediately be seeking where are all those opportunities for me to enroll, because they're free. And so that way you can take advantage of them because the department is funding them.
Absolutely, and we often say that to folks that register with Project Spectrum. These programs and these tools and these different assessments, all of our different outreach tools, they are free to the people that use them, and we obviously see great value in that, and we see people that use them, and we're talking to folks. Do you get any of that feedback as to how many companies are taking advantage of the tools that NSA offers through DoD?
Yeah, so we're able to see what companies have, enrolled in the services, primarily because what we're able to do is then with protected DNS and things like vulnerability scanning, is that we can create tailored reports and provide them directly to the company for their use, right? So if we know that an adversary is actively taking advantage of a vulnerability, and we're able, and that company is enrolled in our vulnerability scanning, we can actually take a look and say, hey, you've got this vulnerability exposed. We know that a nation state actor is very interested in exploiting it. You likely need to prioritize patching it as quickly as possible, right? So we are having this more hands-on approach to these cybersecurity services. We are actively trying to protect these companies from being targeted from ongoing campaigns.
Okay, and now is that information? So obviously, I would say that that would be another valuable source of information as you're seeing these vulnerabilities. You're obviously talking to the folks who are enrolled in that program. Is that also information that you're sharing out outside of the folks who are registered?
Nope. So we provide our vulnerability scanning reports directly to the company, right? So one thing I will tell you is that all of our relationships here at the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center are voluntary and cooperative and mutually beneficial. We are not a compliance arm, we are not an auditing arm, and we are not a contractual arm. So we do not provide information out about those companies. We serve really to just try to help the companies better secure their networks. And so we're able to protect that and share it back out from like a cooperative relationship. And we do that through our virtual collaboration channels, which we have set up going 24/7. We have over 200 channels that we currently manage.
And so I imagine that again really helps to increase the engagement that you have and the impact that you have on companies, particularly small to medium businesses throughout the nation.
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time, Rick.
I'm asking more. So does that really help to, when you're sending this information out, does that help to increase the engagement that you have with these companies that are enrolled?
Absolutely. So when our companies get enrolled into our services, we're able to set them up into an actual virtual collaboration channel with us, directly with our net defenders and our experts and our cyber threat experts. So if that company, in fact, has a separate issue where they're seeing malicious activity on their network or something that they're concerned about, they can directly reach out to us and say, hey, we're seeing this. Is this something we should be concerned about? Is there anything else that you can tell us about it? And so it's really a way directly to get into the National Security Agency's cyber security expertise and our threat analysts.
Very good. And I imagine that's something that filters from the top down. So we have Chris Inglis as the National Cyber Director. We have Ann Newberger as the Deputy NSA for Cyber and Emerging Technology. Obviously, NSA and its leadership and former leadership, they're all very valued. So with that, as they say in the Marvel movies, with great power comes great responsibility. Does the NSA and the folks within the NSA, whether it's current or former, do you have any type of impact on the cybersecurity standards, say like CMMC or NIST? And if so, how does that process work where you can help influence those?
First and foremost, right, the national, NSA's DIB program run here at the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center is another component that supports the DoD CIO DIB cybersecurity program, which obviously is informed and complementary to CMMC. So when it comes to CMMC, again, we're not a compliance or an oversight or an auditing function. However, because of our cybersecurity expertise, we do participate in those working groups to talk about here are the best type of controls and things that you can put in place to better secure networks. But we don't have a specific role. However, we are looking at how our cybersecurity services support NIST 171, right, in terms of their publications. And so we're trying to see how we can fit things in and get people credit for the fact that they're enrolling in these services. And we're doing that across DoD as a whole.
Okay. And then when it comes to CMMC, obviously we saw that DoD listened to the DIB community when they decided to overhaul CMMC. They took it from 5 levels down to 3. They tried to, the level 1 is really self-assessment. So they really were trying to, listen and trying to take action to make CMMC certification much more user-friendly for the DIB. Any thoughts on where CMMC 2.0 is going?
No, I don't have any specific thoughts, right? Obviously, it's still in the rulemaking process. That's not really our role or function. We are very much interested in trying to ensure, to your point, that we try to offer as much as we can to help the small to medium-sized companies better protect their networks from these nation-state actors, whether it be through a voluntary program, whether it be compliance, or just how we help with general cybersecurity advice. And so we are engaged in tracking the CMMC conversation so that we can figure out how we can help.
No, and that's good. And again, we recognize that NSA plays a much larger role. And obviously with that larger role, it does filter down into the DIB. And so, again, I think this webinar is a good show of some collaboration between Project Spectrum and the NSA. Again, we're all fighting the same fight. So, does the NSA, obviously you look to the public-private partnerships, but do you also look to organizations like us as far as helping to provide intel or helping to provide guidance or offering guidance too?
Just so many opportunities and so many different components like Project Spectrum, like NSA CCC, like DC3, right, who really play a significant role in trying to help the DIB as much as humanly possible. The number that I most recently heard is 300,000 companies are in the DIB. That's a lot of people to talk to, a lot of people to help. And comprehensively, we all have different functions and expertise and ways to communicate with the DIB. And so it is really great that we're starting to all come together and build this comprehensive view of who's offering what services, who's championing what, who has the right expertise and bandwidth to cover certain topics. And then how do we create a comprehensive placemat, if you will, so that it's really easy for the DIB to understand who they can go to for what and how we're all working together internal to the Department of Defense.
All right, fantastic. So we do have a couple of questions that are coming in that I really think would be great to address. And so I'm going to just sort of go through these fairly quickly. Well, not fairly quickly, but just read them over fairly quickly so that I can state them intelligently. So one of the questions we have is incidents that you're witnessing with small to medium businesses. Are you seeing mostly illegal activity or is it nation states?
So typically when we get involved in activity, it tends to be derived from nation state actors. Obviously, we're very concerned about the ransomware threat. So that is something that we've actively been engaged with both our FBI and CISA counterparts. So I will say there's the illicit activity when it comes to ransomware, but most of the activity and incidents that we're involved in is the nation state side of the house.
Okay, so you're looking at things obviously on a much broader scale. Now, another question. So when a company uses NSA's tools, where do the results and data go, and do they remain the sole property of the company?
So one of the things I'll just clarify is that when we talk about cybersecurity services that NSA is supporting, they are not bespoke NSA tools. We actually contract out to commercial providers. So these are companies and services that a lot of people are comfortable with. So for protected DNS in particular, since we've talked about that example, right? Akamai runs the service. They onboard the company. They hold the data. We just run our analytics over it to get a comprehensive view of commonalities and find anything that's not, something that we should be concerned about. But we don't actually pull the data out and share it to anyone else. It stays within that proprietary data link.
Okay, and then sort of a follow-up question to that was, so that data that you pull from, is that stays anonymous? You're not seeing an actual company and their browsing history or anything like that?
No, so we're able to see what the commonalities are. We are not able to see specific individuals, their browsers, or where they're going from a domain perspective, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's that is one of the the stigmas that some people have always said. I remember joking with some of my counterparts as well. You don't want to type that in an email. It's going to go across somebody's desk at the NSA. I mean, it's really not that granular. I think that's always just people being funny or being facetious. A question about enrollment. How would somebody get enrolled in the different tools that NSA, like you said, they contract out, but they are tools that you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, you can go to cybercenter.nsa.gov, which is our specific website that talks about the Collaboration Center and all the things that we do. There's a specific section on DIB Defense, which is our defense industrial base, which will take you to the webpage that has the ability, has the contact information, the enrollment form to contact us about the services. And we monitor that daily, and we actually can move pretty quickly to get you enrolled if that's something that you're interested in.
Excellent. Another question that's come in. So certain agencies are starting to look at you know, implementing cybersecurity standards. Somebody wants to know if network penetration testing is part of the tool set that NSA offers.
No, that's not one we currently offer. As I mentioned before, we really focus on working with commercial leaders to provide these cybersecurity services to the DIB that really are trying to essentially eliminate the most common attack vector that we know nation state actors are taking advantage of. So we're not pen testing networks, right? We are just trying to protect against these type of attack vectors and things that we're seeing. So and where we can have unique value from an NSA perspective. So when we talk about things like protective DNS, right? That's the phone book of the internet. That's where you know that you're safely going to www.google.com. If we know, based on our sources and our classified insights, that a nation state actor is using a malicious domain or has created a malicious domain that they want to have people redirected to so that they can inject malware or take advantage and get onto their network, we are actually able to take that unique insight from our classified side of the house and feed that in to Akamai to put on block for all of the companies that are enrolled. So, that's a couple of thousand IOCs that we have uniquely been able to contribute to Akamai's blocking service for what we're doing in protected DNS. That is where NSA plays a unique value, which is why we've invested in that service.
Okay. And we talked about the fact that obviously you contract, services out. Do you regularly work with these partners to make sure that they're staying really, you have to stay ahead of the curve these days. If you're reactive, you're too late. So is there regular collaboration with the third party partners that you work with to make sure that they're being more proactive in helping companies with their cybersecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Let me just talk about it broadly. So when we talk about the fact that we are partnering with the defense industrial base, we are doing that through a couple of different mediums. But when we talk about the DIB, we talk about the full ecosystem of the defense industrial base. And what that means is that we are working with internet service providers, cloud providers, content delivery, network device, endpoint protection, and incident response companies. We are working with the top 15 to 17 DIB primes that make up 80% of DoD acquisition spending, all ones we're probably familiar with. And then we are partnering with things like the National Defense ISAC, Project Spectrum, as you guys know, but then that's where we're hitting all the small to medium-sized companies as well. So it is the full ecosystem. And we set up bi-directional information sharing channels with all of those companies so that we can share our threat insights and our cybersecurity expertise directly with them so they can improve their threat feeds, improve their products, but also just protect against the things that are happening on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. And then we talked a little bit before, or you mentioned before about, NIST 800-171. Is your, is the NSA or the CCC, are you doing anything to look at the requirements on contracts, or do you do any of that sort of high level overview and make any recommendations to for companies, especially in the defense industrial base?
Yeah, so first and foremost, here at the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center, we also have the Center for Cybersecurity Standards, and they directly work with NIST on any given day to ensure that, we have the most secure future technology like 5G and 6G, but we also partner with NIST just on our standards and ensuring that our cybersecurity services are being accounted for within those publications. So yes, we are directly contributing to ensuring that things like protected DNS and vulnerability scanning and some of these services that the department is investing in are incorporated into those standards. But we are also in constant conversations with NIST on how we can continue to help things in future technology as well.
Okay. And then, we got a question that was a little specific, so I'm actually going to broaden it out a little bit. We'll talk about vulnerability scans. You talk about the folks that register for this service. What's the typical timeline if a company that is enrolled in that and there's a vulnerability detected, you know, on just for something that isn't too complex, what would be the timeline from finding that out to getting it up to your level to disseminating it out a little more broadly? I mean, how quickly does that process happen?
Yeah, so usually 2 to 5 days is the timeline in which we can work with the company to understand what they actually want scanned. And once they enroll in the service, right, that is something that happens within hours. So we can move out pretty quickly if people are really interested in that, and we can tailor it specifically to what they're interested in.
Okay. And then if a vulnerability is detected, that could have far-reaching implications. I mean, how quickly does that get up to your level and then eventually get out to other folks?
We run our scans daily, and then we tip them we would tip a company within hours if in fact they had something that was vulnerable. But again, this is us trying to help the company. So just because we see a vulnerability does not mean we then communicate it up and out to the Department of Defense. Our focus and what we put all our time and energy into is working directly with the company to make sure they know it's vulnerable, and then providing any mitigation guidance we may have to patch it as quickly as possible. If a patch is not available, if there's something else going on. I think I saw a question, so I'm going to go ahead and already answer it if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Okay, all of our relationships with the companies are protected under non-disclosure agreements, right? So essentially what you're doing is signing an agreement with us as an NDA to protect that relationship, protect what we're finding, and protect what we're doing. And so just want to make sure that's clear because I saw that question as well.
Absolutely. No, and thank you for grabbing that one. We have another question. What is your vision for legacy support given the scope of cyber issues?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question when you mean legacy support. I'm sorry, can you clarify?
And it's so I'm going to ask the person who submitted that question if they could clarify because I'm just sort of reading what they said. Um, I guess one of the things that I would say is, there are a lot of people that are using a lot of different platforms, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's, Chrome, everybody has different platforms. Obviously, again, keeping things at a higher level. If you see a vulnerability, like you said, somebody in the Microsoft platform, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make things vulnerable for everybody on Microsoft. But if it were a vulnerability across a Microsoft platform, so to speak, um, obviously that's something that you would want to disseminate out a little more broadly. And but there are some people that are running Windows 10. There are some people running Windows 11. Do is it constant monitoring of that across different types of platforms? I'll take that as a legacy system question, maybe.
Yeah, so one of the things that we also do here at the Collaboration Center is we work directly with vendors to address vulnerabilities. We do a significant amount of vulnerability disclosures, actually, especially if they directly impact the defense industrial base and national security systems. And so we do work with vendors to patch those legacy systems, patch those vulnerabilities, and then when we discover them and we create tailored mitigation guidance, we provide that directly to our partners here at the CCC, and then we help them to patch depending on whether or not their system actually has those legacy systems. And so that's one of the best parts is the direct engagement with us on how we can help, if there's additional information we can get for you, or to be completely honest, if you need to facilitate a conversation with the Vulnerability Research Center at Microsoft, like how do we do that? The MSRC.
Okay. And then, so how does the CCC fit into that broader cyber ecosystem with, other SRMAs, relative to CISA or JCDC in particular? How do you fit into that ecosystem?
Question. Thank you for asking that. So first and foremost, let's talk about SRMAs, right? So we are a component supporting DoD, obviously, who is the SRMA for DIB. So we are one component focused on cybersecurity. We work extensively with DC3, with DCSA, with our ANS counterparts, with Project Spectrum, to ensure that as we are sharing information, as we are looking across our partnerships, how are we better securing the DIB under our SMMA role? So I would just say we are fully in lockstep in terms of DoD and fully engaged in that conversation. As it talks about supporting other SRMAs, here is what I would offer. When you think about the National Security Agency, everybody knows that we are part of the intelligence community, but we are also DoD from a combat support agency perspective. So when you think about our intelligence community function, that means when we are producing intelligence, specifically about targeting or a technique or an actor is doing something that may be targeting the energy sector, we share that directly with Department of Energy and then work with them so they can get it out to their ISECs and all their partners and answer any questions they may have. Same with Treasury. So we play into those roles. With JCDC in particular, I actually have 2 employees that are forward deployed to JCDC full time to help ensure we have connective tissue, and when they're receiving information or insights, we're getting it back, and vice versa. If we're able to share based on traffic light protocol. So we have a lot of sharing that's happening between us and JCDC on any given day. I have an FBI integree that we have sit here full time. So if in fact there's an FBI issue and we want to include them in an engagement, we have connective tissue that gets us out to all of the field offices. So we're trying to build all of that connective tissue across the US government so that companies know that we're talking to each other, that they're, if in fact if companies want information shared across multiple government agencies, we have a way to do that. But we also respect the fact that sometimes a company wants to talk to one government agency or one organization or one component. Especially in our case, right, we are really focusing on analytical collaboration, understanding the threat, and securing the DIB. That may at times not mean investigations, that's not compliance, that's not contractual. And so we want to make sure we respect the company's wishes on who and how we share their information, if in fact that's the intent.
And I think that's incredible because typically when you think of federal agencies or even, federal departments, Department of Education, Department of Commerce, Department of Energy, there's a lot of silos that tend to be, and they're put in place for a reason, obviously. So you're kind of helping to break down those silos a little bit when it comes to cyber.
I will say this is probably one of the good things that came out of the pandemic is that we all had to figure out how to communicate virtually, right? We can't all have a big government meeting with 18 people in a room. We have to be able to communicate. And for the National Security Agency, I'm sure everyone can imagine, this was a huge culture shift for us. We're all operating, especially here at the CCC, in an unclassified open environment. And that's how we're sharing our information in real time. That is distinctly different than what we were doing 2 years ago. Right? We were behind a fence line, we were in a skiff, and it would take days or weeks for information to get to the actual company that needs it. Now, because of all these direct relationships and channels that we've set up, it's within minutes, it's within hours. And that's how we're going to start to get ahead of the adversary and not let them really sit on networks for long periods of time or take advantage of us.
Excellent. And it's good to see that something good came out of the pandemic. we were certainly happy about that. So we have another question here. If nation state actors are the focus, does NSA have oversight on the push to make components? And they mentioned chips specifically here in the United States. The question goes on to say, does network security and software matter if we're compromised on the hardware or bare metal level?
So I'll just answer it from a whole of government perspective. I will tell you that NSA, having that technical expertise and understanding, right? We've had an information assurance mission here at the National Security Agency for 50 years, right? We have been invested in understanding and trying to protect critical networks, critical components, critical systems. So we are constantly engaging in those conversations with our US government counterparts on how do we start with security at the baseline. That is something that Director Inglis talks about. We need to have security baked in at the beginning versus trying to fix the vulnerabilities at the end. And so we are actively engaging in those conversations. For those of you that have not seen products recently released by the Enduring Security Framework, that is a collaboration between NSA and CISA and ODNI and industry partners to focus on things like 5G and supply chain and components, hardware, open source software, right? How do we better secure that technology in the beginning? So we do care about that, and we are actively engaged with our US government counterparts.
No, and that's fantastic. Again, breaking down those silos and uh, to me, again, that really shows the commitment to public-private partnerships. Another question that's come in, can you share the primary vectors that nation states are using to gain access to SMB information systems, and maybe talk a little bit about some of the best methods to protect against those vectors?
Yeah, so phishing, remote exploitation, unpatched vectors, these are, easy front doors to walk into, right? So, unfortunately, they're going to use the the easiest way to get into a network. And so we have to start to make that hard, which is why we're focusing on cybersecurity services that take away those vectors. Um, you know, I've heard this a lot and I completely agree with it and understand we have just a lot of system administrators that have patch fatigue, right? I can't patch all these issues. I can't deal with all these things. It's going to break my system if I issue these patches. So one of the reasons that we really invest in the vulnerability scanning is trying to help people focus their priorities and their investments and their resources against the patches they need to institute yesterday. And so that's one of the reasons we're kind of engaging in this conversation so heavily.
All right, thank you. And uh, I would be remiss if I didn't say that obviously Project Spectrum does have resources for those companies that are looking to address those attack vectors. Obviously we do have the tools and the educational materials and the outreach, and we're getting ready. I don't think I'm tipping my hand too much here, but we're getting ready to launch some micro courses that are going to make these things small, easy, digestible. But a lot of that does, again, go back to the CMMC framework. So we have a question here where it starts out. I know this is a little off topic. So I'm just gonna warn you about that, but you did tell me we could have a conversation, so I'm glad that you're willing to roll with that. How are we to understand the government's expectation on use of email for CUI or CUI, controlled and classified information, for those who are unfamiliar? That marked email is being sent in the clear from the government. Does that mean that they need to be on GCC high or equivalent to receive it, or can they assume that the government is going to get better about not using email for CUI?
So I do appreciate having the conversation with you, Rick, but I'm going to have to defer that question. That's not really my area of expertise from a government perspective. We at NSA have a little bit of a different process when it relates to CUI. We actually primarily rely on for official use only because we kind of straddle the line between IC and DoD.
Okay. And, and really, again, that goes back to the unclassified information that we talked about at the very beginning, where you had said there's information that's unclassified that you really feel the need to share and that can be broadly disseminated. And then there's, other information that, really shouldn't be shared. So let me ask this as we're coming up toward the end of our hour. And again, we really do appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to talk to us today. So if you had to give a couple of final thoughts on the most critical things that you feel, not just the people who are attending this webinar, and we thank them for attending, but anybody within the DIB, any small to medium business, what do you feel are the most critical things they can do right now to secure their cyber assets?
So what I would say is take advantage of the resources that various elements like Project Spectrum, like the CCC, like DC3 are providing right now in terms of education, cybersecurity services, or just outreach opportunities to ask what's available to me, what should I take advantage of, what's I'm going to get my biggest bang for my buck, right? Especially the free services that the department is investing in. I will tell you that the DoD is very much invested in providing free cybersecurity services out to the small to medium-sized companies in the DIB. So I would say take advantage of that as quickly as possible. Help spread the word on programs here, like at the CCC and Project Spectrum. If there are people that are interested, if you're interested and you qualify, please contact us directly. We're happy to enroll you as quickly as possible. And then we just really look forward to the fact that we're able to partner with things like Project Spectrum and DC3 to build this comprehensive, essentially playbook of all the things that we're pulling together to better help the DIB and DoD. So it's really, my only word is take advantage of it because it's out there, it's available, and we're trying to help.
Fantastic. And again, having you on this webinar, I hope demonstrates to folks that we are working in collaboration together. And we really look forward to the opportunity to continue to collaborate with you. And again, we certainly thank you for your time today. This has been very enlightening. Hopefully everybody is on the webinar has believed so as well.
Thank you again, Rick. It was great to be here today.
All right, thank you. Morgan Adamski, we again appreciate you having us on your schedule today, and thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and start to wrap things up. Now, of course, I would be, again, remiss if I didn't talk more about Project Spectrum. And so we want to make sure that people understand that the webinars that we have, like this one, we also have other webinars, training webinars, CMMC level 1, where we talk about the new 2.0 framework. And then we have other webinars that we either attend and we present within or that we host. These are just some of the ways that people can get access to our tools and resources. So want to make sure that everybody understands when it comes to Project Spectrum, you've got a couple of different ways that you can interact with us. You can visit our website at projectspectrum.io. You can email questions or concerns. We have an outreach team, and that goes to outreach@projectspectrum.io. And again, we have other webinars, so you can always make sure that you check our website for our calendar for upcoming events. And you can also follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Again, want to say thank you to Morgan Adamski and her team, because I would be remiss if I don't mention your team, because you had several people on your end who were really instrumental in helping with getting us here today. So thank you again to that. I want to say thank you to the Project Spectrum outreach and cyber teams. They were fantastic in helping to prepare us for everything. And we want to, again, thank everybody for joining us today for Cyber Circuits. We wish you the best of success for your cybersecurity compliance journey. And thank you again. Have a great day.